We are here with a friend of mine named Rebecca Kahane. She's a licensed family and marriage therapist. You're based out of El Segundo. And I just wanted to have you on here today to kind of help us, maybe give us some tips on what people are dealing with at home and how it relates to relationships and just personal mental health and stuff like that. Obviously, I feel like you're very experienced and could probably give us a few tips. The thing for me is, we've kind of been in this now for a little while, and so people's mental toughness might be straining. So we'll get into that. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Dan, for so as Dan said, my name is Rebecca Kahane. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in El Segundo. I have been in practice probably a little over 20 years. Um, and my focus is uh, a lot on couples work. So I have a pretty extensive background in couples, but as well, I do a lot of individual work. So that's kind of who I am.
That's perfect. And so I wanted to just dive right in here and talk about, what are you telling people that may be getting frustrated, irritated, stir crazy, that, like I kind of alluded to at the beginning, have been in this state a little while. It looks like we're going to be here at least another 2 to 4, possibly 6 weeks, if everything gets better. What are you kind of telling people on how to kind of deal with this situation of being quote unquote kind of locked up at home?
All right. Well, that's a good question. And I think in the beginning, we were all kind of embracing the downtime, the time to spend with our family, a time to learn a new skill or hobby, even having some reflective time. But as you said, as sort of time has gone on, it's become much more stressful and just very difficult, very hard. And so, what we've noticed is that our patience is waning, our tensions are high, conflict is on the rise, and motivation is really low. So, and I'm hearing that a lot with like my sister, who's a teacher at the high school. Her students are really unmotivated. It's just, everybody says, what do I have to look forward to? I get up in the morning, we do schoolwork or we take care of the kids, and then what's next? We eat, go to sleep, and do it again.
Right.
So, what I tell my clients is that it's really important, regardless of the amount of stress that's going on, is that it is important to find purpose and meaning through this tough times. So, um, Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian psychiatrist and the author of Man's Search for Meaning, he was a prisoner in the concentration camps. And so what he did was he helped to inspire the other prisoners um, to find just the simplicity and of everyday observances in order to help them survive. So he actually called it tragic optimism. It's finding the meaning in in the face of adversity right
Right.
now. So it's, how do we find that meaning in everyday things? So what I do suggest to my clients is to do things like take a walk in nature with a renewed perspective, or notice as you're walking your feet hitting the ground and feeling the earth underneath your feet. I would call this sort of a walking meditation, if you will. Other things are reach out to people you haven't talked to, spend some time. Join a online group related to a specific interest. There's so much of that going on. So if you love movies, join a group that talks about movies. I think we're so inundated by the news, we need to turn the news off and start talking about other things besides, what's going on. Because we're all hearing the same thing. We're all in fear. We're all stressed, you know. But I think this is a time to learn to try to be present and in the moment, because fear and anxiety cannot exist when we are present.
Right.
So, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, just an anecdote. I have a friend that's a jogger, and he's relying heavily on exercise right now, which I'm sure you agree with. But even so, he wants to run every street in Hermosa Beach because there's just streets he's never been on, and he never would have the opportunity to do that. And like you said, but in a way where he's like getting a fresh perspective, looking at something new and different that he hasn't seen before.
Yeah, that's great. I love that idea. That's really neat. Yeah, and I've heard a lot of creative things like that.
Yeah. All right. So next question. This is a big one. What is your best piece of relationship advice during this time?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for sure.
I have a follow-up question too, and maybe you'll hit on this, but I know a lot of kind of traditional marriage advice or couples advice is to create time for yourself and, like date nights and stuff like that. Obviously, we don't really have that luxury anymore. So I'd love for you to touch on that, other ways to kind of, do something in that way.
Right. So, we've never spent so much together time in history. It's crazy, and our personal space has really shrunk down in size.
There is none.
You might live in a big house, but it feels really small when you're on top of each other. So one of the things that I think is really important is that we need to normalize the stress and strains of our anxiety because of the lack of structure and just way too much togetherness. So I would say to my couples, it is important to develop routine both together and alone. I think that's really, really important during this time. And what we need to do is be able to delineate the space, whether that's the space in your house or the space outside. And you have to discuss that with your partner. Just don't run off and say, I'm taking a break. Right. It needs to be discussed. And so, for an example, I had a client who has two very small children. They're both working from home, but he really just needed a break. And he went outside in his car and turned on his music. And that was his break. But other things, go upstairs to your bedroom or go to another room, turn on your own movie, read a book. Because alone time is really important. I mean, we spend alone time when we go to work, we go work out, whatever. Right now it's a bit harder, and certainly with parents, you have to coordinate that time. Now, with couples that are in greater distress, and what I just previously talked about was, couples that don't have a lot of issues and they're doing pretty good. But couples that are in greater distress, don't think that you need to solve your marital issues during this time. We're in crisis. So you need to put those issues on the shelf. And what I like to think of it as, you got to band together like a team and work together through this crisis. Recognize that during this time, everything is heightened due to this lockdown. So we don't want to make any conclusions about our relationship because our judgment's really impaired. So, just set it aside. And a good example is when, the fires hit up in Northern California. people were not talking about their relationships while they were trying to get out of their house and get their children safe and, animals safe, find a new place to live, rebuild their home. They were working together as the crisis. So we are in a crisis. We need to definitely work together.
Yeah, I mean,
Now,
it definitely seemed.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it definitely seems like this could actually magnify issues, but if you can take the opportunity and just put them on the shelf and almost give yourself an opportunity to focus on something different and potentially work together, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
could actually help some people.
I was just listening to somebody today, Esther Perel, who is a leading expert in relationships, and she said that through this crisis, we're either going to, see the cracks, or we're going to see light through the cracks. And I thought that was pretty profound because, it's either going to break us or make us, I think, in that way. With couples that are on the brink of divorce, they've been talking about that way before this ever happened. So what I would say to them is do not make any decisions right at this moment unless that has been already planned prior to going, into quarantine. So again, just remember that you got to work together as a crisis. Don't talk about the financial issues or the custody arrangements or anything like that. Just put it on the shelf. It'll be there when when we get back out into the real world, and talk about it then. Be kind to each other. I know what brought you to the divorce was you weren't being very kind to each other. So, try to do that, help each other, ask each other how you can, how they can help you get through the day or what would make your day better. Those are really helpful things.
That's great. And so basically, kind of parlaying off of all that, families with children, whether it's one child, multiple children, different ages, it is stressful to be a parent right now, especially with younger children. They're schooling from home. I know with my two kids, I think they're actually getting sick of each other because they don't have that break of school. My two kids happen to go to different schools, so it's even more of an exaggerated space from each other. That is gone. They're pretty much around each other 23 hours a day. What is your best piece of advice for parenting while you're trying to be teacher, trying to be a breadwinner, trying to be homemaker?
Right.
The luxury of any kind of help is kind of out the window right now. What are you telling people?
So again, that's a great question. I get that a lot. So I think the first thing I would say, and I think this is so important, is do not judge yourself. In other words, do not compare yourself to all the other things and people that you see on social media. You're not going to be perfect, but you're perfect just the way you're doing it, right? So do not judge yourself. We're in a really hard time right now. And there's never before been a time where a parent is wearing so many hats for our kids. So, it's about how do you get through this gracefully? So my best advice with parenting is we do need to have some consistency and some structure. But we also need to be flexible. So, if you're planned out your day, but somebody's tired or you got up late or whatever, just say whatever and go with it, because we have nothing else to do, and just sort of regroup and recalibrate and just go on with your day. So don't judge that you didn't do it perfectly during the day. As well, don't feel guilty that you're putting your kids in front of the TV or their devices. Parents need a break during this thing too, away from their kids, even though the kids are in the house. So it's okay. You got to be gentle with yourself, and you need a break. Remember that if you don't show up as your best self, you're not giving your best self to your kids. So that's kind of what I would say to the parents.
Yeah, I feel like we've been taken back in time to like the days on the prairie where like you're literally in a house with nobody else around and you're teaching the kids, school and life lessons and cooking every meal. And we've been knocked back like 100 years in some ways.
You know, me of like I have this image in my head about like all the kids around mom churning the butter, because
Right.
number of people to do it. And in a way, it's a good analogy, because we all need to be working together. So we all need to be churning this butter to get things moving.
Yeah, it's, a lot of patience, a lot of grace, a lot of just, understanding that we can't expect things to be the way they were before all this, during this time. Yeah. So, well, I
Yeah.
really, really,
I
go ahead.
was just going to say, I'm hoping that we can all look back on this and really appreciate the level of resilience and creativity and patience that we all have developed through this time. I think it's really important to recognize in ourselves how really resilient we are. And just as a little exercise, I would suggest people to, in their alone time, to sort of search back into their own history of resilience and write that down and let it serve as a reminder that we can get through this. We are resilient people. We're not just going to get up and die. We are resilient.
Yeah, and I also think one of the things that's helped me, and I'm by no means one of those people that does this every day, but I really try to, is make a gratitude list, whether it's in my mind or even better on paper. But like, even if it's just 3 things a day or 10 things that you're grateful for, I think too, like coming out of this, you'll realize, I think some people's priorities will change.
Yep.
Something, like we're going to kind of come out of this a little, leaner and meaner about what's important to us, what we want to do. Because, we've kind of been stripped of so many things. We kind of might have realized we might not need of some of those things.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I really love the idea of a gratitude list or gratitude journal. I do suggest that. I like doing it at night because then you can reflect on your day. So I do think that's great.
Awesome. Rebecca, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I hope these tips have been helpful to your audience. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk with them.
No, yeah, I appreciate you so much. If it helps one person on one little thing, it was all worth it. So,
Good. Thank you.
uh, awesome. Thanks so much. I'll let you get back to your day, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.